We are now going live on Facebook too. A good evening to all the members and the keynote addressee, Professor Chandramani Reddy from SKD University, Anantapur. I profusely thank him for accepting our invitation to speak on this very important subject. And Telangana Jana Vedika, as usual, has taken up a very crucial subject today. Because when I also welcome Professor Ram Reddy Gava, he's also a political science man, professor, retired from Usman University now, and he's a dean in your Anantapur Central University. Welcome, sir. Anyway, when we are talking about Indo-US relations, we have to go into the root post-independence and pre-independence and all these things. And as I mentioned earlier, both these countries, one is the oldest democracy and one is the largest democracy. So before I go into the depth and waste all your time, to a valuable time, I request Dr. James Prashant to do a little introduction about the subject. Later, Dr. Akhtota Srinivasulu will moderate the meeting and also introduce the speaker to us. Thank you so much. James, please take over.
Thank you, sir. As Ramagaru has been saying, this is a very crucial subject. And the United States and India are respectively the oldest democracy and the largest democracy in the world. Being part of a democratic culture would obviously make sense to have a partnership, a relationship, and a strategic depth in many spheres to work in tandem for mutual prosperity and also regarding issues that affect globally. According to US foreign policy, the drivers of this relationship are based on shared values of commitment to democracy and upholding the rules-based international system, also underscored by shared interests in promoting global security, stability, and economic prosperity through trade, investment, and connectivity. Post-World War II, India emerged onto the world stage with a large geographical area, strategic location, large population, and especially as a democratic republic. It also entered a bipolar world structure dominated and competed by the United States and the Soviet Union. Former Foreign Secretary Shyam Saran says, in studying foreign policy since independence, I consider this search for strategic autonomy a running and consistent theme. This objective may have been pursued through non-alignment in the post-independent years, but even if its pursuit is happening under another label today, some call it multi-alignment, the aim has remained unchanged. Strategic autonomy is the ability of a state to take relatively independent decisions on matters of vital interest. Expanding the scope for such autonomy is the hallmark of a successful foreign policy. Nation states behave according to their national interests, and analyzing these aspects through a study of history and a philosophical lens helps us to perceive how states secure their interests, cooperate with other states, and the overlay of the world order. The philosopher Immanuel Kant in 1795 posited that a group of republican states with representative forms of government that were accountable to their citizens would be able to form an effective coalition or a league of peace. This hypothesis has initiated a lot of theoretical and empirical research among scholars known as the democratic peace debate. These issues are divided by both theoretical and methodological differences. In trying to find common ground between these divergent approaches, students of politics should use the past not to predict the future, but to help people understand political developments as they unfold. Whilst there are many theoretical perspectives of the international relations discipline, and it is quite broad. Professor Stephen Walt says the study of international relations is best understood as a protracted competition between the three debates of realist, liberal, and radical traditions. Realism emphasizes the enduring propensity for conflict between states. Liberalism identifies several ways to mitigate these conflictive tendencies, and the radical tradition describes how the entire system of state relations might be transformed. However, the boundaries between these traditions are somewhat fuzzy, and a number of important works do not fit neatly into any of them. But debates within them have largely defined the discipline. The dominant theoretical tradition throughout the Cold War was realism, since it depicted international affairs as a struggle for power and their interests between states. Realism theory is generally pessimistic about the prospects for eliminating conflict and war, and it best explained the Cold War years because it provided simple but powerful explanations for war, alliances, imperialism, obstacles to cooperation, and other international phenomena. And because its emphasis on competition was consistent with the central features of the American-Soviet rivalry. Realism evolved considerably throughout the Cold War. Classical realists such as Morgenthau and Niebuhr believed that states, like human beings, had an innate desire to dominate others, which led them to fight wars. Morgenthau also underscored the analysis of classical, multipolar, balance of power system and saw the bipolar rivalry between the United States and the Soviet Union as especially very dangerous. Contrastingly, Walt's advanced neorealist theory, which posited that since this system is anarchic with no central authority, it ensures a continuous security dilemma for states. His focus was more on the structure of the system, which is anarchic, and the pursuit of interests by states. Secondly, a broad family of liberal theories competed with realist theory and asserted that economic interdependence would enable cooperation between states than using conflict and warfare against each other because each side's prosperity would be threatened. Another theory associated with President Woodrow Wilson posited that the spread of democracy was elemental to world peace, claiming that democratic states were more peaceful than authoritarian states. While positing that states were still the central players in the global system, neoliberalism argues that international institutions such as the IMF, International Energy Agency, World Bank would encourage cooperation for the benefits of prosperity, which would prevail against selfish state behavior. Although there is much criticism that these transnational institutions and multinational corporations are encroaching on the sovereignty of states. Third, the main competition for both realist and liberal theories until the 1980s came from the Marxist traditions, which offered a completely different alternative. Whereas the nation-state system was taken as granted in the realist and liberal perspectives, Marxists offered a completely different analysis for the cause of international conflict and also offered a structure for transforming the international order. Marxist tradition saw capitalism as the central cause of conflict as a battle for the incessant struggle for profits between capitalist and socialist states and advanced capitalist powers and less advanced nations. However, not all international affairs scholarship fits neatly into these three theoretical perspectives. There is still a lot of scholarship and theories focused on the characteristics of the international. Nevertheless, these are the three main paradigms of international affairs, according to Professor Steenwald. This field is very dense and complex to unpack, especially in trying to theorize, formulate, comprehend, or analyze the relationship between the United States, a global superpower, and India, an emerging great power. India's relationship with the US has had its highs and lows. However, the last 15 years has seen a vibrancy which would have been unheard of in the 1970s. So this is actually a very complex topic. And we are very happy that we have a very senior professor, Chandramouli Reddy, sir, to help us unpack this subject and help us to understand the unfolding developments of the Indo-US relationship. Dr. D. Chandramouli Reddy is Assistant Professor, Department of Political Science and Public Administration, Sri Krishnadevara University, Andhra Pradesh. He is alumnus of University of Hyderabad. He has taught political science for 25 years. He has published 2 books, one on comparative politics and another on international relations. He's edited 1 book on e-governance, has published around 20 articles in Scopus, UGC, Carelist, and has peer-reviewed journals. Has presented around 35 papers on national and international seminars. We are most honored to have Professor Chandramouli Reddy in our midst. Now, before I hand over the floor to our moderator, as per our tradition at Telangana Jana Vedika, I would like to read the preamble of our constitution. We, the people of India, having solemnly resolved to constitute India into a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic, and to secure to all its citizens justice, social, economic, and political, liberty of thought, expression, belief, faith, and worship, equality of status and opportunity, and to promote among them all fraternity, assuring the dignity of the individual and the unity and integrity of the nation. In our Constituent Assembly, this 26th day of November, 1949, do hereby adopt, enact, and give to ourselves this Constitution. Now I would like to hand over to our moderator. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Thank you. Telangana Jana Vedika Zoom online meeting కు ఇచ్చేసినటువంటి పెద్దలు ప్రొఫెసర్ చంద్రమోహన్ రెడ్డి గారికి, అలాగే వేదిక సభ్యులు ఇతర పెద్దలైనటువంటి రామరెడ్డి సార్ గారికి, ఇతర ప్రొఫెసర్లకు, తెలంగాణ జన వేదిక సభ్యులందరికీ స్వాగతం, సుస్వాగతం. ఇవాల్టి అంశం చాలా ప్రధానమైనటువంటిది. ఇంత ముందే జేమ్స్ ఇంట్రడ్యూస్ చేశాడు ఆల్రెడీ. ఇండియా అమెరికా సంబంధాలు మారుతున్న రూపాలు అనేటువంటి అంశం పైన ప్రొఫెసర్ చంద్రమోహన్ రెడ్డి గారు డిపార్ట్మెంట్ ఆఫ్ పబ్లిక్ అడ్మినిస్ట్రేషన్ అండ్ పొలిటికల్ సైన్స్, వీరు హెడ్ డిపార్ట్మెంట్ గాను మరియు అట్లాగే బోర్డ్ ఆఫ్ స్టడీస్ చైర్పర్సన్స్ గాను పనిచేయడం జరిగింది. వీరు శ్రీకృష్ణదేవరాయ యూనివర్సిటీలో ప్రస్తుతం వీరు పనిచేస్తున్నారు. వీరు అనేకమైనటువంటి నేషనల్ ఇంటర్నేషనల్ ఆర్టికల్స్ కూడా రాశారు. ఇంటర్నేషనల్ రిలేషన్స్ మీద కూడా చాలా ఆర్టికల్స్ కూడా వాళ్ళు రాయడం జరిగింది, పబ్లిష్ చేయడం జరిగింది. వారు ఇప్పుడు ఇండియా అమెరికా సంబంధాలు మారుతున్న రూపాలు అనేటువంటి అంశం మీద వారిని మాట్లాడవలసిందిగా ప్రొఫెసర్ చంద్రమోహన్ రెడ్డి గారిని సాధారణంగా ఆహ్వానిస్తారు. ప్రొఫెసర్ చంద్రమోహన్ రెడ్డి సార్.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. So, good evening, one and all. So, at the outset, I would like to thank Telangana Jana Vedika for giving me this opportunity to deliver a talk on Indo-US relations. Okay. Before I go to the crux of the issue, just a word of caution. So when we discuss, rather when we talk on an issue on bilateral relationship between India and United States that spans nearly, say, 75 years. So it's not really possible to discuss all the issues threadbare and in detail. So obviously, I'll not be discussing all the issues threadbare. I'll be discussing only issues of salience, and will be deliberating only on points of importance. As such, there is every possibility that I may be skipping some of the issues, but I'll see that I'm going to discuss all the important issues without missing the main points. So having said that, I have to say now that we know that the bonds of friendship between India and United States of America of late have been getting strengthened for various reasons. But this was not the case, say, around, say, before 1991. So we had something called Cold War before that. And I am sure that most of you are conversant with the phrase Cold War. So the Cold War was the heightened tensions that existed between the two power blocs, one led by United States of America and the other led by the Soviet Union. So when India became independent in 1947, then India was in fact forced by United States of America to become its camp follower. So even before India got its independence, in fact, the Indian people, rather the Indian leadership, did not have truly positive opinion about United States of America, because United States of America and England, they were on very good terms. So in fact, United States of America was not a champion of Indian independence. But when it comes to Soviet Union was a champion of Indian independence. Okay, so right even before independence, in fact, we did not share, say, very harmonious relations with United States of America. Rather, we did not appreciate the stand that was taken by United States of America. And after the end of Second World War, we know how the Cold War erupted. And after India became independent in 1947, we see how United States of America asked India to join the bandwagon of United States, for the simple reason it believed that the policy of United States was the containment of communism. In fact, it also wanted to contain the expansionism of Soviet Union. So as a result, India being a democratic country, America believed that it was a natural ally, and it was going to join it was going to become the camp follower of United States of America. But India refused to do so. So India wanted to chart its own course, and it came up with its own brilliant foreign policy called the non-alignment. So the reason why India wanted to follow non-alignment was because it had suffered a lot under the jackboots of colonialism when Great Britain was ruling India, and it believed that probably in the days to come, if it was to join the American camp, so the British colonialism was going to be replaced by American colonialism. And apart from that, India wanted to have harmonious relations with both the camps because it wanted to get best of the both worlds. So it thought that it could get aid not only from the American camp but also from the Soviet camp. So in fact, if it wanted to develop, it wanted to free from all these tussles and wars and all these conflicts. So it thought that if it maintains good relations with both the United States of America and Soviet Union, it could get benefit from both the camps. But United States America did not really appreciate India's non-alignment policy. In fact, United States believed that it was some kind of a sanctimonious clock, where India was trying to hide its real intentions. So America believed that America was pro-Soviet Union, and in order to hide its feelings, hide its soft corner for Soviet Union, in fact, it was championing this cause as non-alignment. So what happened was, we have this Secretary of State, John Foster Dulles. So he said that it was immoral. The stand that was taken by India was immoral, and he further stated that those countries which were not with America, they were against America. Okay, so when this was the case, also obviously you cannot really expect harmonious relations between India and the United States. So that was the foundation on which we find some kind of say acrimonious, rather disharmonious relations between these two countries. And subsequently, what happened was, in 1949, we see how China became a communist country in 1949. So once China became a communist country, America became even more paranoid. So it believed that sooner than later, so communism was going to engulf the entire world. And in fact, when China became a communist country, United States of America refused to accord recognition to China, rather the mainland China, which was called PRC. We know that in the tussle that took place between Chiang Kai-shek and Mao Zedong, so Chiang Kai-shek lost, and in fact, he went away to Formosa, the present day Taiwan, where we are facing a lot of music now. It's in news now lately. So once he went to Formosa, so United States of America accorded recognition to the Chiang Kai-shek regime in Formosa or Taiwan, but not to PRC, or the People's Republic of China. India, on the other hand, was quite persistent that PRC must be given the recognition, and it also was championing the cause of PRC to be given a membership in UN Security Council. So this was another thorny issue between India and United States, and this also irritated the United States of America to a great extent. And then after this, we have uh, the Korean War. Okay, so even in Korean War in 1950, we see how the North Korea attacked South Korea. So when North Korea attacked South Korea, so America, in fact, identified North Korea as aggressor, and in fact, it wanted all the countries to say contribute military forces for evacuating of the North Korean forces from South Korea. And India refused to do that. It said that it was really not in a position to contribute forces. So when India did not go hand in hand with United States America with Korean issue, with regard to Korean issue, even that became a issue of bitterness between these two countries. Okay. So meanwhile, what happened was, we find uh, say Pakistan evincing interest in joining the bandwagon of United States of America. So Pakistan thought that it got an opportunity to make use to have friendship with United States of America, because it believed that in a conventional war it could not really win against India. It has seen how it lost the war in 1947, the first Kashmiri war. So that he thought that if it could really be a good friend of United States of America, it could procure all the weapons that it want. It could procure all the military hardware that it wanted, and in any conventional war, it could really win against India. And it also thought that it could be getting more than adequate support from United States of America in its any adventure against India. So in fact, we see that so in the entire history of Indo-US relations, Pakistan happened to be an important factor. So we really cannot de-link Pakistan with regard to Indo-US relations. Okay. And in fact, we can understand Indo-US relations only from the perspective can be understood by taking only Pakistan as a factor in the relation between these two countries. And apart from these things, the major bone of contention was the United States view with regard to Kashmir issue. So we are all conversant with Kashmir issue. We know how Raja Hari Singh, the Maharaj of Jammu and Kashmir, signed the instrument of accession, and in fact he gave Jammu and Kashmir on a platter to India. When Jammu and Kashmir joined as one of the states of Indian Union, so it was not palatable to Pakistan. As a result, we find Pakistan lending its support to the so-called tribals who really invaded Jammu and Kashmir and occupied part of Jammu and Kashmir. So, in fact, Mountbatten advised Nehru to take the issue to United Nations Security Council. So Nehru was also formed because he had a lot of faith on the United Nations, and he believed that once the issue was taken to United Nations, he believed that it could really do justice to India, because he believed in the impartiality of United Nations. But to his dismay, that did not happen. In fact, United States of America refused to identify India as an aggressor. And in fact, it had pressurized India to go for a plebiscite. Okay, because in fact, Nehru said that once the forces, the Pakistani militia was vacated from Jammu and from Kashmir, so he was in fact prepared to go for plebiscite. But the condition is that unless the militia was there, he was not going to hold a plebiscite. But the United States of America forced India to go for a plebiscite with the tribal militia there. So this was another a contentious issue or a thorny issue between these two countries. So next, another problematic issue between India and Pakistan was the American arms aid to Pakistan. So what happened was in 1954, India and Pakistan signed something called the Mutual Defense Assistance Agreement. So it was signed in May 1954. The President of United States of America was then Eisenhower. So President Eisenhower believed that he should really strengthen Pakistan militarily. Apart from Pakistan, he wanted to strengthen Iran, Iraq, Turkey also. He believed that with the help of these things, he could really encircle Soviet Union and also China. And this could really facilitate the containment of communism. So as he believed that Pakistan with its two flanks, the West Pakistan, the East Pakistan. So with West Pakistan, why he could it could effectively contain the spread of Soviet Union, and the East Pakistan, that is the present day Bangladesh, could really help in containing the spread of Chinese communism. So with that intention, he signed that agreement called the Mutual Defense Assistance Agreement in May 1954. And in fact, he wrote a letter to Nehru where he had promised that the armaments, the military hardware that America was going to give to Pakistan will be used only against communist countries, but not against India. But the experience shows, in fact, the Pakistan had quite categorical. The Pakistan leadership had quite categorically stated that the armaments that they are going to get from United States of America, they are not going to use it against China, Russia, Soviet Union. Rather, they are going to procure all these armaments to use against India in its future wars for taking Kashmir from India. In fact, so this was again another big issue between India and United States of America. So in fact, India believed that because of this agreement, the Cold War has come to the of South Asia, and Nehru really did not want Cold War to come into the portals of South Asia. He believed that Afro-Asian nations will be free from this scourge of this Cold War, but it did not really happen. And apart from that, in fact, Pakistan also joined C2 and CENTO, the military alliances that were floated by United States of America to contain the spread of communism. In fact, India was initially asked to join them. When India refused, so Pakistan was more than happy to join them so that it could really win the hand of friendship of United States of America. So this military alliances and this military bond that was really developing between India and between United States and Pakistan was also a very thorny issue and a contentious issue between India and United States of America. Subsequently, in 1961, what happened was India wanted to liberate Goa. We all know that Goa was a Portuguese colony. Goa, Dio, and Daman, they were Portuguese colonies. So India, in fact, wanted to use force. In fact, it was in talks with Portuguese for nearly 14 years. So in spite of these long talks, um, Portugal refused to vacate the territory of Goa, Dio, and Daman, saying that it had its legitimate constitutional political rights over Goa. So left with no choice, India had to conduct a military action to capture Goa. And this was not really liked again by United States of America. It condemned India. In fact, it supported Portugal for the simple reason Portugal was a NATO member and it was an ally of United States of America and West Europe. And this was another issue between India and United States of America. And we have next issue was the Sino-Indian border dispute that took place in 1962. We know how on October 20th, 1962. So China made an aggression, Aksai Chin and the present Arunachal Pradesh, and it had captured territories there. So when China committed aggression on India, so India sought the help of United States of America, and United States of America was more than willing to say lend arms to India. In fact, it had provided arms worth 500 million. Okay. Meanwhile, what happened was on 20th November, in fact, China called for a ceasefire. But India was really happy that United States of America came forward for lending arms to America. So you had some kind of bonhomie between these two countries for a couple of years. But all this friendship that was there, in fact, it evaporated just within another 3 years. Because in 1965, what happened was Pakistan committed aggression on India in Rana of Kutch and elsewhere. In fact, Pakistan used the American military hardware, American armaments that were provided to Pakistan. So in fact, this had really irked and irritated the Indian people because Pakistan was choosing American armaments. In fact, earlier also, Indian leadership had really pointed out to Indian leadership had really pointed out to United States of America, Eisenhower and others, that the armaments that they're going to give to Pakistan will be used by Pakistan against India. So in spite of many pleas that were made by India, all these pleas fell on deaf ears, and the armaments that were given to Pakistan were used against India. So this was another issue between these two countries. And next we have the Indo-Pakistan War of 1971. So we know how by 1969, so you have this Sino-Soviet conflict. So even Soviet Union and China, they fell out. In fact, they also had a border war. So when China fell out with Soviet Union, so United States of America believed that China was a lesser evil when compared to Soviet Union. So that's why, in fact, it wanted to befriend China. So now we have that ping pong diplomacy, and we see how that man, Henry Kissinger, the National Security Advisor and the Secretary of State of United States of America, going to Beijing and talking to Mao Zedong. And in fact, all these things was arranged by the Pakistani President Yahya Khan. So now we find an axis, rather a bond of friendship developing between United States of America, Pakistan, and China. And this was detrimental to the interests of India. So India believed that if it wanted to protect itself against these combined three forces, because we bear in mind, by 1964, China also became a nuclear power. It tested its nuclear weapons, it became a nuclear power. And already United States of America was a nuclear power. Okay, so with two nuclear powers acting against interests in tandem with Pakistan, So India believed that it was left with no choice but to have some kind of friendship, some kind of treaty with Soviet Union. And as a result, on August 6, 1971, India signed a treaty of peace, friendship, and cooperation with Soviet Union. So this treaty was basically signed to ward off any aggression from either say United States of America or China. And we know the developments that were rolling out in Bangladesh. We know how when Mujibur Rahman won the elections, General Yahya Khan refused to hand over power to Mujibur Rahman. So as a result, there was some kind of civil war in Pakistan. So in fact, East Pakistan wanted to break away from West Pakistan, and we had the refugee crisis. As a result, India was left with no choice but to go for a war. So India fought a war in the fag end of 1971, where Pakistan lost the war, and East Bengal emerged as an independent country, Bangladesh. Okay, so this issue. So during this war, in fact, America was quite critical. Richard Nixon, the then president of United States of America, was quite critical about India. In fact, he always found fault with India, in spite of the fact that the American public and the American media were supporting India. So American president was against India. And in fact, during the war, President Nixon sent USS Enterprise and the aircraft carrier into the Bay of Bengal, in fact, to threaten India. But all these things really did not work. And after the war, India emerged as a preeminent power in South Asia, and United States acknowledged the fact that India was a preeminent power, and it in fact it promised that it was going to accord that status to India. So after this war in 1971, we see how in the developments that were taking place in Afghanistan were again another issue of another thorny issue between India and United States. We know that Soviet forces occupied Afghanistan in 1979. So once these forces were occupied, and in fact, the then President Ronald Reagan, so he believed that India would also criticize Soviet Union for its actions, but India refused to do openly. But behind the curtains, in fact, it talked to Russia, and in fact, it tries to convince Russia to vacate the aggression from Afghan soil, but it could not really do that. So again, this Afghan, the support that the indirect support that India was lending, rather the fact that India was not criticizing Soviet action in Afghanistan, was again a contentious issue between these two countries. So that's how we see that, say from 1979 also, say till 1991, until the end of Cold War, rather till the collapse of Soviet Union. So the relations between these two countries were not really harmonious. So India, in fact, United States of America was placing all its bets on Pakistan, and it was supporting Pakistan to the hilt. It believed that Pakistan was a better bet than India, and as a result, it was providing all arms to Pakistan. So this was not really liked by India. So the relations between these two countries were not really harmonious till 1991. But subsequently, we see the turn of events. In fact, we see the turn of fortunes of India with regard to its relations with the United States of America. So what really happened in 1991 was the collapse of Soviet Union. So in fact, it was a very epoch-making event in the international politics. So we know that thanks to the perestroika and glasnost, the reforms that were really heralded in by the then Russian President Mikhail Gorbachev. So in fact, the Soviet Union fell apart. In fact, it broke up into 15 states. So the situation was so pathetic. In fact, Russia, which happened to get the legacy of Soviet Union. So in fact, it was really in a pathetic condition. In fact, it had to seek even aid from United States of America. So once the Soviet Union collapsed, then the world became unipolar. So when the world became unipolar, India was left with no choice but to play second fiddle to United States of America. It was forced to dance to the tunes of United States of America, because it did not have the benefit of the support of Soviet Union. We know that Soviet Union was the biggest supplier of military hardware. Even to this day, Soviet Union happens to be the biggest supplier of hardware. Even as recently as a couple of months ago, in fact, we purchased S-400 Triumph anti-missile system. So once we lost the support of Soviet Union, so India was left with no choice but to dance to the tunes of United States of America. And even the United States have also appreciated the fact that, and in fact, India's policy of non-alignment also lost its relevance in the absence of Cold War. And apart from that, the plank anti-imperialism. Sir, Prashant sir, you wanted to talk something there, sir?
No, sir, not at all. Please go ahead, sir.
All right, right. So in fact, the anti-imperialism plank on which India was really banking to accrue support from Afro-Asian countries also lost its relevance. So now India did not have non-alignment. So it also lost that anti-imperialism plank, and now it was forced to play second fiddle to United States of America. So it started to befriend United States of America. So even United States of America on its part, it also realized the fact that the world, though for the timing it's a unipolar, it believed that in the days to come it was going to believe multipolar for the simple reason so many power centers were emerging, and one among them was China. So it also believed that India had to be befriended. So that's how we find these two countries trying to strike some kind of good relationship with one another. So that was the time when we have this Gulf War in 1991, when United States of America was really forced to wage war against Saddam Hussein when he occupied Kuwait. Okay, so in fact, the United Nations Security Council and other European countries were really more than forthcoming in helping America. So in this Gulf War, India was also lending moral support to United States of America in 1991 also. Subsequently, if we see that, okay, so before that, I'm sorry, I forgot to discuss another contentious issue, the nuclear issue. So in fact, nuclear issue was also another contentious issue between India and United States of America. We know about, I think you're all conversant with, so other than the people from political science, I think you're all conversant with something called Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, which came into existence in 1970. So this Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, which came into existence in 1970, in fact, it was really championed by the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council, namely China, Soviet Union, England, France, and United States of America. So the main crux of this treaty was that the nuclear, so they really wanted, they really wanted to dissuade the spread of nuclear weapons. They did not want the nuclear weapons to proliferate. So what they really happened was they came out with a treaty where the 5 permanent members of the Security Council, who also happened to be nuclear powers, they thought that they should not share their nuclear technology, nuclear nuclear weapons, nor nuclear fuel to any other countries which are not going to sign this treaty. And India refused to sign this treaty for the simple reason that it believed that it was highly discriminatory. And India also believed that if India refused to sign that, and if India signs the treaty, then India will be deprived of an opportunity to develop its own nuclear weapons, atomic bombs. Because India believed, because India was scared that Pakistan was already a nuclear weapon in 1964, and we had border issues with China. And we lost the war very badly in 1962. And in the absence of nuclear weapons, sooner than later, India was going to lose another war with Pakistan. And there was every fear that China would occupy the territory that it was claiming from India. So as a result, India refused to sign NPT. Okay, so when India refused to sign NPT, so United States of America refused to give fuel to Tarapur plant, and subsequently France took over that responsibility of providing fuel to Tarapur plant. So this was another contentious issue between these two countries, and this contention rather manifested again in 1998. And we know that in 1974, I think it's on 18th May 1974, that India exploded the nuclear bomb, which it called technology demonstrator in the Pokhran in the deserts of Rajasthan. So once this was done, once this explosion, once this test was done, so it was this had really created a problem between India and the United States of America once again. So that's how we had many thorny and acrimonious issues, which did not really help develop good bonds, good relationship between these two countries. But all these things changed after the collapse of Soviet in 1991. And we know how the Cold War ended, and non-alignment became irrelevant. And India was left with no choice but to play second fiddle to United States of America. So we see how after 1991, so in fact, there were many reasons why India was rather forced to develop very good and harmonious relations with United States of America. One of the reasons was the economic factor. So we know that in 1991, so in fact, it was a watershed moment in Indian history. So in fact, India was facing balance of payment crisis. So as a result, India was left with no choice but to go for LPG liberalization, privatization, globalization, because this was going to facilitate foreign direct investment in India. So under the able leadership of PV Narasimha Rao and with Manmohan Singh as the finance minister, so we find this, and from that time we see foreign capital, especially from United States of America, making its inroads in India, and subsequently as the Indian economy grew and in size and it started getting opening itself, then we find many American investors investing their money in India. Apart from that, even the trade between India and the United States also started developing. And apart from this, we also witnessed another important development. So in fact, India also started becoming a knowledge economy, and even the global outsourcing industry also started moving towards India. So all these things had really started really developing some kinds of bonds between United States of India. And in fact, the former Undersecretary of State of United States of America, Nicholas Burns, has pointed out that big breakthrough in US-India relations was achieved originally by the private sector. So that's why this private sector really played a very instrumental role, very formidable and paramount role in bringing these two countries initially. And during this time, so India was very much focused only on the economic reforms. So it was though there at the back of the mind of the Indian leadership that they have to go for nuclear weapons. In fact, Rajiv Gandhi also gave his nod for developing a nuclear weapon, because once he got the intelligence reports that Pakistan was going for a nuclear weapon with the help of Chinese. So in fact, Rajiv Gandhi also gave his nod, but that could not be taken to its logical end. Subsequently, even PV Narasimha Rao also thought that he should go for nuclear weapons, but somehow he developed cold feet, because he thought that he should not rub United States of America on the wrong side. So that's why he could not really go ahead with that nuclear program, and it was left to Prime Minister Vajpayee to do that subsequently in 1998. Okay, so during the time of PV Narasimha Rao, the focus was mostly on uh, say the economic reforms. And apart from these economic factors which have really helped bonding between these two countries, so there were also political factors which had really contributed for this. So we know that America is really home to nearly 2.5 million Indian diaspora, Indian non-resident, said non-resident Indians there. So even these people, some of these people were there, lobbying for India. So we find some of the American representatives there in Senate and House of Representatives, say championing the cause of India. We had that Indian caucus there, which was really supporting the cause of India. Even in India also, even the legislators in India also, but they were not as anti-American as they were during the time of Mrs. Gandhi or during the time of Nehru. So in fact, by 1991, we see that India was really having many multiple party system. It started getting strength, and we find BJP becoming an important factor to be reckoned with in Indian politics. And BJP, in fact, was against it was for concerning non-alignment to dustbin. It believed that non-alignment had no relevance for India, and in fact, it was also a supporter of say United States of America. In fact, BJP in its earlier avatar, say during the time of say Janata government, in fact, when Morarji Desai was the prime minister, in fact, they were more close to United States of America than to Soviet Union. So in fact, even say BJP was also championing the cause of India's relations with the United States of America. So thus these even political factors were also acting as a strong impetus for these two countries to come together. So we find some kind of new pragmatism in Indian foreign policy, and India was really prepared to take risks. Okay. And in fact, it wanted to have friendships with many countries, and in fact, it was ready to have good friendship with United States of America, and in fact, it also tried to develop relations with China too. After Rajiv Gandhi's visit to China in 1988. So in spite of the fact that these two countries were moving closer, it doesn't mean that there were no irritants. Rather, there were so differences between these two countries. The differences continue to persist, and one of the differences was the continued military assistance that was being given by United States of America to Pakistan. So in fact, there was something called the Pressler Amendment, which did not really allow the President of United States to give, say, military armaments, military aid to Pakistan, unless he certifies that Pakistan does not have a bomb. Rather, Pakistan is not in the process of making a nuclear bomb. But in 1995, there was something called Brown Amendment, a congressional amendment which allowed the United States of America to resume arms supplies to Pakistan. So the alibi that United States of America gave was that Pakistan needed all these arms, okay, to fight against the terrorists. So, but India did not really accept that, because India has always been pointing out to United States of America that the arms that the United States of America was lending to Pakistan were being used against the Indian military and the Indian civilians. So the terrorists who were really operating in Kashmir. So in fact, they were taking the arms that were given by United States of America to commit atrocities against the population in Kashmir. So this was again an irritant between these two countries. And apart from this, so in fact, United States of America also wanted India to abandon its indigenous integrated missile development program. We see that under the able leadership of Abdul Kalam, so we had very formidable missile development program. In fact, India was being forced, rather India was being arm twisted by United States of America to give up its integrated missile development program, because missiles are the delivery systems that really help you to deliver nuclear weapons. So that's why United States of America was quite particular. And in fact, it also blocked Russia from giving its cryogenic engine to India, because cryogenic engines are used in intercontinental ballistic missiles. So it left no stone unturned to scuttle the missile development program of India. And this was really not liked by India. In fact, United States of America also denied high technology to India. So all these again issues were thorny issues between these two countries. And in 1995, so United States of America pushed through a permanent extension to NPT, Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. So once this permanent extension was, now India was was given only two choices: either to sign NPT, okay, and make peaceful uses with nuclear fuel, or if it doesn't sign NPT, it was not going to get any nuclear favor or other things to have its say for its nuclear reactors, thermal reactors. And in 1996, and what happened was, in fact, America also forced India to sign CTBT, that is the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty, where the countries were not really allowed to test nuclear weapons, because in 1974 we have done that. So in fact, America wanted to deny that opportunity to India once again. So that's why India forced the United States of America forced India in CTBT in 1996, and India refused that. So that's also India was really, though it was trying to maintain cordial United States of America, so it was not really getting possible that America had its own interests in mind. It really did not want America to become a nuclear power. So this was not really liked by the Indian leadership. Okay. So meanwhile, in 1998, we see how India exported its thermonuclear devices again in May under the leadership of Vajpayee. So once, and the then Defense Minister George Fernandez, in fact, he pointed out a finger at Russia, at China, saying that because of China, we treat China to be enemy number one. That's why we are exporting the nuclear devices. But it was not really lapped out by United States of America. As a result, United States of America imposed sanctions. So once India exported its nuclear weapons in May 1998, so this was reciprocated in kind by Pakistan. So we find how Pakistan also exported its nuclear devices in a place called Chagai Hills in Balochistan, and Pakistan also became a nuclear power. So now America started believing that South Asia is no more a safe place. Okay, and it also believed that there's every possibility that Pakistan would be sharing its nuclear technology with Iran or some other Islamic countries or Saudi Arabia, whatever it is. So now, because of this Pokhran 2, so this again embittered the relations between these two countries once again, and as a result, we find sanctions being imposed. Okay, so but what happened was, after this Pokhran 2, we find though America imposed economic sanctions immediately. So these nuclear tests, in fact, they have precipitated the longest series of high-level bilateral talks in history of Indo-American relationship for the first time. So it's a real irony that as long as India tried to say explode, test nuclear weapons, so India was leaving no stone, sorry, United States of America was leaving no stone unturned to contain India. But once India exploded the nuclear weapons and it came onto the world saying that it's a nuclear power, okay, to be reckoned with. So America started engaging in India, and we find the longest series of high-level bilateral talks in the history of Indo-American relations for the first time. So in fact, for the first time in the Indo-US relations, we find a genuine attempt, okay, by the United States of America to have some kind of balanced approach in American foreign policy towards South Asia. So this really vindicated the India's stand that the world respects only power, and India and world gives respect only to power, to countries which have nuclear weapons. Okay. So in fact, evidence of this American respect for India came sooner than later, and we find how in 1999, so Pakistan committed aggression on India in Kargil. So when Pakistan committed aggression on India in Kargil, so in fact the then President of United States of America, Bill Clinton, in fact, he was quite categorical. Okay, he was also quite unambiguous. He in fact called Pakistan aggressor, and he talked to Nawaz Sharif and asked him to pull back the troops. Okay, so this was and contrary to the past experience, was India was where India was usually found fault by United States of America. So this was probably the first time when United States of America accused Pakistan of aggression. Okay, and in fact it blamed squarely Pakistan, and in fact the responsibility was put on the shoulders of the then Prime Minister of Pakistan, Nawaz Sharif. So this really marked a change in American attitude towards Kashmir, which was previously sympathetic to Pakistan, and it was no more the case now. And meanwhile, what happened was, so many of the Republican congressmen in United States of America also, they were also against CTBT, when the American legislature could not pass CTBT. So in fact, it was rejected, okay, in Congress in October 1999. So when America itself rejected CTBT, and when India became a nuclear power after Pokhran 2, so United States of America accepted the fact that India is a nuclear power. So in fact, both these developments really weakened American negotiating positions with regard to India. And in fact, it really eased post-Pokhran rapprochement between India and United States of America. So in 2000 AD, we find Clinton visiting India. In fact, he was the first president to India after 22 years. So earlier that, we find that man Jimmy Carter visiting India in 1978. So for nearly 22 years, no American president really visited India. And the trip of this man, Bill Clinton, was a resounding success. And in fact, it was a landmark in the ongoing transformation of India-US relations. So in fact, the following year, that was in 2001, we find George Bush coming to power, and he came up with his own NMD, or the National Missile Defense Initiative. And India was more than happy. In fact, it was one of the few countries which rather supported this National Missile Defense Initiative of George Bush. And meanwhile, in the same year, that is say September 2001, on 11th September 2001, we see how the Al-Qaeda terrorists made an attack on the Twin Towers. Okay. That's the World Trade Center, and once the Twin Towers were attacked, so India offered to give all operational support for the US war against terrorism in Afghanistan. So when India started moving closer towards Afghanistan, so on 22nd September 2001, we find United States of India lifting all sanctions against India. And we also see how this bilateral defense policy group that was suspended since 1990, it was revived once again by the end of the year. So following the terrorist attack so on World Trade Center, so now America started arm twisting Pakistan. In fact, it was pressurizing Pakistan, and it was in fact trying to extract the commitment from Pakistan to curb cross-border terrorism, because America knew very well that the Afghan terrorists were also held by ISI. So that's why it tried to extract a commitment from Pakistan that it would be taking counter terrorism measures. And in fact, it forced Pakistan to put two Islamic terrorist organizations, namely Jaish-e-Mohammed and Lashkar-e-Toiba, on the list of foreign terrorist groups. So we find these two countries really moving closer. And in 2002, we find a very important development in the relations between India and United States of America. We have something called next steps in strategic partnership. So in fact, United States of America formulated this next steps in strategic partnership. And in fact, this laid a very strong and formidable foundation for cooperation in civilian nuclear activities, in civilian space programs and high technology trade, along with an expanded dialogue on missile defense. So within a span of a decade or so, the United States of America had really reversed its long-standing policies of nuclear non-cooperation and technology denial towards India. Okay. Subsequently, we find something called so this was really reciprocated by India also. So in fact, in 2005, India really voted along with United States of America against Iran at the International Atomic Energy Agency in a resolution with regard to Tehran's nuclear program, because it was believed that Tehran was on the verge of becoming a nuclear weapon state. So that's how we find that India and the United States of America are moving closer, and we also find naval exercises being taken up together by these two countries. And these were known famously as the Malabar exercises in the Indian Ocean. So we find 27 warships from 5 other countries, namely United States, say 5 countries, namely United States of America, Japan, Australia, and Singapore, along with the India taking part in these naval exercises. So we find the Indo-US civilian nuclear agreement signed in 2005 by by Indian Prime Minister Manmohan Singh and the George Bush, the US President George Bush, on 18 July 2005, when this man Manmohan Singh visited United States of America. So for all practical purposes, this in fact say divided all the facilities that the nuclear weapon states have, rather in spite of the fact that India has not signed nuclear non-proliferation treaty. And in fact, India was removed of that nuclear pariah status. It was no more a nuclear untouchable as far as United States of America was concerned. Okay, so this next step in strategic partnership really helped India and United States of America to cooperate in civilian nuclear activities, civilian space programs, high technology trade, and missile defense. And after this thing, we have something called the 2+2 dialogue, or the interministerial dialogue. So the dialogue between the defense and foreign ministers of India and the defense and foreign ministers of United States of America. Okay. So in fact, by this development, we find the blossoming of a global strategic partnership between these two countries. So earlier we had a lot of trade relations, trade and commerce relations, but because of this interministerial dialogue, or which is famously called the 2+2 dialogue, we have something called, we find Indo-US defense mechanism evolving, and we find defense and strategic affairs dominating the bilateral landscape between India and United States of America. So we also see how India also signed something called the Comcasa Pact, which came to know the communications capability and security agreement. So this was something called an agreement that really facilitated the communications between the Indian military hardware and the American military hardware that India was really purchasing. So the reason why all these things were developing was another strong impetus was China. So apart from the bilateral relationships, apart from the bilateral factors which were really strengthening the relations between these two countries, so other reasons why these two countries were coming together was the regional power balances, the regional developments that were really taking place. So the proactive policies that were being pursued by China were also really a threat to United States in Asia Pacific region. So this China was also an important factor that really contributed for the strengthening of relations between India and United States of America. And now, so see that the declining Pakistan. So now America believes that Pakistan is a declining power, and many of the countries in the West believe that Pakistan is going to be a failed state. And in fact, they know that Pakistan is harboring terrorists. And in fact, we know how Osama bin Laden was in fact killed in Abbottabad, one of the cities in Pakistan. So they knew that Pakistan was really harboring terrorists, and in fact, it was also supporting Al Qaeda and Taliban indirectly. So they had lost faith with regard to Pakistan. So because they had the declining interest in Pakistan, and they also were witnessing the increasing power of China. And all these things, the declining power of Pakistan and the increasing power of China, really it also motivated India, USA, Entente. And we know how China is emerging as a power to be reckoned with in international politics. So now, in fact, it is now challenging the might of United States of America. So we have something called Thucydides trap. In fact, this particular term was popularized by American political scientist Graham T. Allison. So what this concept really says that he says that when an emerging power really threatens a status quo power, so the status quo power does all that it can to contain the growth of that emerging power. So we know how China is trying to dislodge the United States of America and try to emerge as a superpower. And now United States of America is trying to do that. And we find another international scientist, Ashutosh Varshney, who described this development as a new triangle. He says that when the first and second rank powers fight, so the first power often ardently quotes the third power, and they say that India is going to be the third power there. So that's why, because of the growing might of China and the growing the nuisance that China is creating in the East China Sea, in the Taiwan Strait, and in the South China Sea. So now United States of America is trying to quote India. So now it is said that China is the second biggest economy, and its defense expenditure is also growing by leaps and bounds, and it's only next to USA and Russia with regard to defense expenditure. So and it's also providing nuclear technology to rogue states like, say, North Korea, say Pakistan, Libya, and Iran. So all these things are really creating say nightmares to United States of America. So this is one of the reasons why United States of America wants to befriend India. And we have something called an arrangement called the Quadrilateral Security Dialogue. So we find out in a short form, which is called Quad, famously called the Quad. So now we see United States of America, Japan, Australia, and what should I say, India, Australia, United States of America, and Japan coming together to contain the menace of China in Asia Pacific. So in fact, China wants to make the entire South China Sea and East China Sea its lake. It wants to make it a Chinese lake. But most of the international trade, nearly 30% of the international trade passes through South China Sea. So so India and United States of America, along with Japan and Australia, they want to keep the sea lanes open in this region. So they are left with no choice but to come together to contain the menace of China in this particular region. So that's why we find this Quad emerging. So in fact, this came in 2007. In fact, this was the initiative by the Japanese Prime Minister, late Shinzo Abe, who was assassinated just a couple of days ago, along with another Australian Prime Minister, John Howard, and Indian Prime Minister, Manmohan Singh. And apart from this quadrilateral security dialogue, now we have something called I2U2. And this Quad is China famously names it as the Asian NATO. And they say that America is trying to contain the influence of China in Asia. And apart from this, we also have something called the I2U2, which is called the West Asian Quad, where India, Israel, United States of America, and UAE are also coming together with focus on trade, combating climate change, energy cooperation, and also issues pertaining to security. So thus we see India and America. So in spite of the fact that they had many differences initially during the time of Cold War, okay, subsequently, thanks to the end of Cold War, now these two countries are coming together. And in fact, various factors have really contributed for these two countries coming together. So thank you one and all. Yes, sir, I am open for questions.
థ్యాంక్ యూ సార్, థ్యాంక్ యూ. సుమారుగా గంట సమయం పాటు ప్రొఫెసర్ చంద్రమౌళి రెడ్డి గారు ఇండియా అమెరికా సంబంధాలు మారుతున్న రూపాలు అనేటువంటి అంశం పైన చాలా లోతైనటువంటి విశ్లేషణ చేయడం జరిగింది. ముఖ్యంగా భారతదేశ ప్రపంచంలోనే ఒకటి పురాతనమైన ప్రజాస్వామ్య దేశం కాగా, రెండోది భారతదేశం కూడా అతిపెద్ద ప్రజాస్వామ్యం ప్రపంచం లోపల అనే విషయాన్ని తెలియజేస్తూ స్వతంత్రం రాకపూర్వం దగ్గర నుండి మొదలుకుంటే నేటి వరకు అనేకమైనటువంటి విషయాల మీద ప్రొఫెసర్ చంద్రమౌళి రెడ్డి గారు లోతైనటువంటి విశ్లేషణ చేయడం జరిగింది. ముఖ్యంగా 1971 సమయం లోపల పాకిస్తాన్ కు ఆయుధ సాయం సరఫరా చేయడం అనేటువంటిది అమెరికా చేయడం అనేటువంటి జరిగింది. ప్రధానంగా 1991 తర్వాత యుఎస్ఎస్ఆర్ అనేటువంటిది ముక్కలుగా విడిపోవడం, అప్పటి నుండి ప్రచండ యుద్ధం అనేటువంటిది ముగిసిపోవడం, ఆ తర్వాత కాలం నుండి భారతదేశానికి అమెరికా నుండి అనేకమైనటువంటి పారిశ్రామిక సంబంధాలు కానీ వాణిజ్య సంబంధాలు కానీ పెరగడం అనేటువంటిది జరిగిందనేటువంటి విషయాన్ని చాలా స్పష్టంగా చెప్పుకుంటూనే, ముఖ్యంగా ట్విన్ టవర్స్ ఏవైతే ఉన్నాయో వాటిని ఎప్పుడైతే ఉగ్రవాదులు కూలగొట్టారో అప్పటి నుండి ఉగ్రవాదానికి వ్యతిరేకంగా అమెరికా అనేటువంటిది పెద్ద ఎత్తున వారు ముందుకు రావడం, నాటి నుండి నేటి వరకు ఉగ్రవాదానికి వ్యతిరేకంగా వారు పోరాటం చేస్తూ భారత అమెరికా దేశాల మధ్య మంచి ప్రజా సంబంధాలు కొనసాగుతున్నాయనేటువంటి విషయాన్ని చాలా స్పష్టంగా ప్రొఫెసర్ చంద్రమౌళి రెడ్డి గారు తెలియజేశారు. వారికి మా తెలంగాణ జనవేదిక తరఫున ప్రత్యేకమైనటువంటి ధన్యవాదాలు సార్. ఇప్పుడు ఎవరైనా సార్ను ప్రశ్నలు కానీ మీకు ఏమైనా సందేహాలు కానీ ఉంటే అడగవలసిందిగా ప్రొఫెసర్ రామరెడ్డి సార్. ప్రొఫెసర్ రామరెడ్డి సార్.
ఎనీ అబ్జర్వేషన్స్ రామరెడ్డి గారు? రామన్న. సిగ్నల్ సరిగ్గా ఉండదు, అదో ప్రాబ్లం.
హలో
సార్.
నమస్తే రామన్న.
సార్ నమస్కారం సార్.
నమస్తే.
నమస్కారం రాము గారు. నమస్కారం శ్రీనివాస్ గారు. గుడ్ ఈవినింగ్ డాక్టర్ జేమ్స్ అండ్
Good
హలో
evening.
చంద్రమౌళి.
సార్ నమస్తే సార్, బాగున్నారా సార్?
యా బాగున్నా సార్. ఇట్స్ అన్ ఎగ్జాస్టివ్ అండ్ ఎక్స్టెన్సివ్ కవరేజ్ ఆఫ్ హిస్టరీ ఆఫ్ bilateral relations of two great countries in the world for the last 7.5 decades. I think Chandramouli has tried to do justice to the topic by tracing the history of relations from Cold War era to the post-COVID era. Chandramouli, I have only one, no observation, one question.
Yes,
as
sir.
As a student of international relations, fine. How do you describe India and China, India and America relations today in one sentence? Then I will continue my question.
Okay, sir. Sure. So I believe that they're harmonious, and in fact, because of the force of circumstances, especially what is happening in Taiwan now, I think they are going to maintain good relations in the days to come. And right now, I believe they're harmonious, sir.
Yeah, fine. Right. Now my question is, 21st century is the Asian century.
Yes, sir.
America is, as you said, you quoted some American scientist
Sir.
that America doesn't like change in the status quo.
Yes, sir.
And China is threatening the status quo of power in international system.
Yes, sir.
So now America is trying to take upon China. In the process, America has got entangled the India. That is how I would describe.
Yes,
My problem is,
sir.
India, right? My problem is today's India. I'm not talking of yesteryear's India. Today's India wants to establish itself as a power in the world. Reasons, there are stated reasons, there are unstated reasons. And today's century, to present century is the 21st century is the Asian century. And in Asia, the two unexplored powers are China. One is the China, followed by the India.
Yes, sir.
Since China is threatening the status quo of America, America wants to contain the China with the help of fellow Asian power, that is the India. Imagine had India been in the position of China. Had India been in the position of China, I'm sure America would not have been the same to India as it is today.
I completely agree with you, sir. In fact, for some reason, so it's saying that there'll be war because of this Taiwan issue, and there is say at least there's one prediction saying that in fact even India will be dragged into the war. So they're
Yeah,
saying that Japan is going. Sir, kindly 1 minute, sir. So it said
yeah.
that even Japan is going to pitch in, and they are hoping that even Australia is going to join the war in case there's a war between India and Taiwan. In fact, the United States of America is going to champion the cause of Taiwan there, and it is said that in fact even United States of America is to impress upon India to make take advantage of this opportunity, because India lost its territory in the 1962 war. So I read an article somewhere, sir, recently that in fact even India will be asked to make use of this opportunity to grab back its territory, access in other territories from China.
Precisely. I'm coming to that, Dr. Chandramouli.
Huh.
Look, now China is claiming the Taiwan,
Huh.
and right, and for that it is ready to take up on the America, and America is opposing it. Fine. Now, question is, if India also follows tomorrow the similar idiom of claiming back its territories, which were India's once, as the concept of Akhanda Bharat is being promoted
Yes,
and
yes, sir.
propagated,
Yes, yes,
would
yes.
and what would be the stand of America vis-a-vis India, and what would be the status of bilateral relations between India and America?
Good, sir. Sir, yes, sir. So I was mentioning to that the Thucydides trap, sir. So we
Yes.
know how in ancient Greece, when Spartan authority, rather when the Spartan military might was challenged by Athens, okay, Sparta was left with no choice but to fight against Athens. So the same will be the case with India also. We know that in international relations you have neither permanent friends nor permanent enemies.
Exactly.
So when India is going to grow to be too big for its shoes, and America believes that it's high time that India should be cut down to size. So America will not have any two opinions, and so is the case with India. And if India gets an opportunity to cut United States of America to size and emerge as an eminent power, so do you think that India will also have second thoughts regarding that? Certainly not, because India is at the receiving end, and India does not have neither the economic nor the military wherewithal to fight against America now, because we are left with no choice. We are trying to befriend the United States of America against the Chinese aggression now, because we see how China are at our doorsteps, okay, and trying to threaten us in all possible ways. So because we don't have any choice there, so that's why we joined Quad there. Not that we want to help United States of America or Taiwan or some other country. We joined Quad. So we joined Quad to protect our own interests and to protect our own and to promote our own interests. So suppose for some reason China gets defeated and China is cut down to size, and if really India emerges as an Akhand Bharat, and if it really emerges as a power to be reckoned with in international politics, so we don't need to entertain, we don't need to foster or harbor any doubt that America is going to like that. Certainly America will try to implement all the tricks of the trade to cut India down to size. No two opinions regarding that. So that's what international politics is all about.
Okay. So can I understand it that the bilateral relations between India and America are not symbiotic but situational?
Situational, and to some extent, can I say opportunistic also, sir?
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
I have a question. Can I ask you?
Yeah, please, sir. You're welcome.
Yeah, you in your discourse has mentioned about Indo-American relationships.
Huh.
Also mentioned about Kashmir and the accession of Kashmir into Indian Union.
Huh.
After the accession of into Indian Union, there was an article called the 370, which provided some rights to the Kashmiri citizens.
Huh.
After the abrogation of Article 370,
Huh.
and splitting of the Kashmir into two union territories.
Huh.
Ladakh being the border of China,
Huh.
and while China is going ahead with the Belt Road and invested huge monies. So do you think that there will be a war on the pretext of Indo-Pak relationships, Pak-occupied Kashmir, and China supporting India, China supporting Pakistan to protect its financial investments in the Belt Road after the Galwan incident?
No, right now I don't think that's a distinct possibility, sir. I don't think it's going to happen in the immediate future, because China has its own headaches now. thanks to the Taiwan issue there. Okay, and in fact, even I think even Pakistan can't really trust China. You see how, in fact, Sri Lanka is facing problems because of the debts that it had taken from China, and in fact, China has also abandoned Pakistan. Now, Pakistan is approaching IMF and United States of America to bail it out from its economic quagmire. Okay, so I think in the near future it's not going to happen. Maybe in the distant future, I'm not really sure about it. But I think wars are a costly affair, sir. So in fact, China, I think, is also going to make a cost benefit analysis. So when it goes to war for the sake of the investments that it had made in, say, the part of the POK that it had taken from Pakistan. And another thing is we need to bear in mind that India is also a nuclear power. And earlier, India believed in no first use policy. So now it says that after the Galwan crisis, it says that it has to revise its policy now. So at least to keep China at bay, it has to say revise its policy. So I think India will take sumptuous and adequate steps to see that China does not really gets into that misadventure.
But there will not be any physical war. Probably it will be a technological war. And technologically, China is highly advanced. Where do we stand, India?
Sir,
In case,
Sir, recently I read an article, say a couple of days ago, saying that now China has come out with a policy where they can really manipulate the minds of the soldiers.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
and if that's the case, and if the kind of technological strides that they are making, I think we have tough times to face. And maybe other countries of the world will also come together because they know that China is going to be a big threat to the entire world, and it has grown bigger than it shows.
So instead of pumping money into technology, we are talking about Akhand Bharat and some national fervor. How is India is going to address these issues?
Sir, India is facing many problems with regard to, say, domestic politics. In fact, I think yesterday some Kisan unions came together saying that they are against that Agnipath. Now they know they do not want to take those soldiers on that, say, those Agniveers, whatever it is. So it is left to the government as how it's going to tackle all these issues. No doubt they are all Herculean challenges. They are challenges of Himalayan proportions. So they are no small task. I think it is left to the government of India to tackle all these issues. The sooner the better.
Thank you. Anybody having any questions? Where is Dr. Aditota?
I have a quick comment.
Yeah, sure.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So, Professor Chandramouli Reddy, I immensely enjoyed your talk. It was really wonderful.
Thank you, sir.
While you said you were just going to do a threadbare session, you basically touched almost all the important aspects in a linear progression of history. So it was really good listening to you and revisiting all those key aspects, because you're again able to analyze and reanalyze like what happened earlier, what has happened now, and so it was really wonderful. And I'm really glad you brought up the Thucydides trap, and it actually it explains a lot of what is happening around. Also, it also the I think also offensive realism also kind of helps in understanding the issues of great powers and how they are encroaching upon each other's spheres of influence. And one thing I think thought is like from what Ramagaru has been saying, I would see the relationship of in the Indo-US relationship at a very high when I see more technology transfers happening in the domain of AI. So that I would love to see that happening. And also there is as you have said that we could be drawn into issues, even though we might not wanting to be there, but we would have to be drawn because of the nature of these issues and the hegemonic attitudes and the struggle for hegemony that is happening between these powers. And one more thing I wanted to add was it was really surprising the kind of stand India took during the recent Russia-US conflict on Ukraine. India refused to take a stand. So it showed that that it is maintaining its strategic autonomy there. So it was quite. It was really fascinating listening to you, Professor Reddy. Enjoyed really much. Thank you.
Sir.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. Anybody is there? Yeah. Sir, may I conclude, sir, please? Ram, sir.
Manoj.
Manoj Reddy here.
Good evening, all, and thank you, Professor Chandramohan Reddy garu, for giving us the time and for a detailed discussion on international relations. A small question, sir.
Yes, sir.
How were the relations to American relations in the previous government, that is Congress regime, and how are the relations today in BJP's regime? Will it be good in future? How it will be, sir?
Sir, actually, governments matter very little when it comes to bilateral relations between countries.
Exactly.
So what really matter are the circumstances that really exist in international arena. So no doubt, if you see even during the time of Manmohan Singh, during the 10 years that he was in power, the Congress government was in power, we see how we really had very good relations with the American government. So we find the signing of that civilian nuclear agreement. So we also see that next step in strategic partnership, all those things. So even now, I don't think the relations between these two countries are going to get any lessened. I think there's a lot of scope for improvement. Okay, and I believe that these two countries are really going to forge a very strong relationship in the days to come. Very strong and formidable relationship for the mutual benefit of both the countries.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah,
Abidullah.
thank you.
Abidullah.
Sir, good evening, sir.
Yes, sir.
Sir, hello.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Hello.
Yeah, sir. Please, sir. Please.
Sir, am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
You
sir.
are.
Please
You
go
are,
ahead.
sir.
Sir, I just request for how this terrorism developed.
Sir, your
How
voice,
this terrorism
your
developed, sir.
voice is rolling, sir. Could you come
Throughout
once
the
again,
world.
please? Could you kindly come once again?
Sir, how this terror?
आवाज
Hello.
बराबर नहीं आ रहा आपका।
हाँ साहब, अभी
सुनने में नहीं आ रहा,
Hello.
बराबर नहीं आ रहा।
The
Hello.
voice is rolling, sir. The voice is rolling.
Yeah.
sir, no.
Yeah, go ahead,
Is it
sir.
fair,
we
sir?
can.
Please. Yeah. Please go ahead.
Sir, am I clear?
Yeah, now you are
Yes,
clear,
yes,
sir.
yes,
Now
sir.
you are
How
clear.
this
terrorism developed, sir? Who developed terrorism throughout the world?
It's a very broad topic to talk about
Sir,
now.
how this terrorism developed throughout the world?
Sir,
Sir, who developed it? Sir,
yes. So it's there's a saying that one country's patriot is another country's terrorist. Okay, so America says that you find Islamic terrorists in Iraq, Syria, and Afghanistan. And in fact, Afghanistan and other people say that it is America which is the number one terrorist. In fact, who was the one who bred and developed Osama bin Laden? In fact, when Soviet Union occupied Afghanistan,
sir.
it was United States of America which really helped
Sir.
the Mujahideen in Afghanistan. In fact, subsequently they metamorphosized into Islamic terrorists, and they are creating problems for America now. So, in fact, who was the one who really helped Saddam Hussein? And when they thought that he was a challenge to United States of America, he was killed. And you see what's happening in Iraq and Syria
No,
now.
he was.
Yes, sir. So we really can't exactly
Sir,
pinpoint.
arms, ammunitions, nuclear powers.
Sir.
Who developing? Who developed, sir? I'm not talking who are the terrorists. Who are
That is,
developing
no,
terrorism?
Abidullah ji,
That's the question, sir.
that is not a question to be asked here. This is
Ji,
not
ji.
a forum where we can discuss about terrorism. Who developed? Everybody knows who is the
Sir.
man who is behind the screen. So there's no point in discussing about that. Anyway, thank you for your question. Thank you so much.
Sir, Excellency, so thank you, sir.
Thank you, Abidullah sir. Telangana Jana Vedika.
Anybody
Sir,
having any
thank
more
you, sir.
questions?
Thank you, sir.
Anybody having any
sir.
more questions? Last, I'll give you 2 minutes. Lot of
Sir, mute lo unnaru meer. Mute ki vellipoyaru.
yeah, 1 second.
Okay.
Ramurthy garu meer emana adutara? Hello, Ramurthy garu. Okay, I think nobody has any questions. Athar Hussain. Muhammad Athar Hussain. Chalo. Sir, Adhyaksha.
Hello.
Yeah.
Athar Hussain is there. I think he just
हाँ
came
बोलिए
moment ago.
अतर हुसैन जी बोलिए
सर मैं बाद में कॉल करूंगा सर एक कॉल आ रहा मैं
okay
बाद में
okay then we'll talk later okay thank you
Okay.
yeah nobody has anything
Yeah, thank you sir. Thank you. Telangana Jana Vedika Zoom online meeting కు విచ్చేసి భారత అమెరికా సంబంధాలు మారుతున్న రూపాలు అనేటువంటి అంశం పైన కీలకోపన్యాసం ఇచ్చినటువంటి ప్రొఫెసర్ రెడ్డి గారికి మరియు తెలంగాణ జనవేదిక తరఫున ప్రత్యేకమైన ధన్యవాదాలు సార్ రాజమౌళి రెడ్డి గారికి. అదేవిధంగా ఈనాటి కార్యక్రమంలో పాల్గొన్నటువంటి ప్రొఫెసర్ రామరెడ్డి సార్ గారికి ఇతర పెద్దలందరికీ పేరు పేరున ధన్యవాదాలు తెలియజేసుకుంటూ ఈనాటి ఈ కార్యక్రమం ఇంతటితో ముగిస్తున్నాం. వచ్చే వారం మరొక టాపిక్ తో కలుసుకుంటామని తెలియజేస్తూ అందరికీ మరొకసారి తెలంగాణ జనవేదిక తరఫున ప్రత్యేకమైనటువంటి ధన్యవాదాలు ధన్యవాదాలు తెలియజేసుకుంటూ అందరికీ గుడ్ నైట్ సార్. గుడ్ నైట్ ఎవ్రీవన్. థ్యాంక్ యూ సార్.
Good night. Thank you Professor Reddy.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
thank you so much sir it was really a wonderful talk. We really enjoyed and you have really put lot of food for our thought tonight.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much sir. Thank you
Sir,
Yeah.
sir, can I leave now?
yes sir thank you so much
Thank you.
in
Good
spite of your ill health and all that you have committed yourself and I'm very thankful sir. Please thank you so much.
Sir, thank you. Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Good night, sir. Good night. Good night, sir.
Good night.
Manoj bhai, good night.
Yeah, good night, James. Bye. Bye, na.
Yeah. Uma?
He's on mute.
Uma, unmute yourself.
Hello.
Ah.
Hello.
Uma,
Anna.
good night.
Hello. Anna, good night.
Good night.
Anna, వచ్చిర్రా అన్న?
Yeah.
అది ఇప్పుడే ఫోటో వచ్చిందా?
అదే నేను మనోజ్తో అదే అన్నా అంటే ఉమా అర్థం చేసుకుంటాడు అని చెప్పాడు. మనోజ్ మాట్లాడతలేవింది.
ఉమా అర్థం చేసుకుంటాడు అన్న. ఉమా బ్రాడ్ మైండ్ మరి మావాడు మా తమ్ముడే.
రేపు ఉంటారా అన్న?
ఉంటా.
కలుస్తాను.
ఓకే.
Okay, sir. I'll talk to you in a bit.
Yeah.
Bye,
Good
sir.
night.
Good night, sir. Good night, everybody.